Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience. I know that's it's been a while for some of us that have been sitting here, so we appreciate your patience on that. We do have one board member that is virtual. He's actually going through an airport right now, so bless his heart for getting in here with us. So we appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and call this special school board meeting to order right now. It is 6:18, if we can make that. We're going to do the flag salute. So if everybody can join me in the flag salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We also tonight, if you would, please just join me in a moment of silence for the tragedy that occurred earlier today in Wisconsin. So if we can have a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Okay, roll call. We have 3 present and 1 virtual. And then I need to go ahead and I have a couple announcements, please. First, Dr. Skinner is not with us tonight because her father-in-law has passed away as of late yesterday. Second, as board chair, I know that we have a large audience and I know that emotions are running high with everyone, but I will be keeping order at our meeting tonight. Please be respectful of everyone here. I will recess as necessary to make sure the order stays in place. This is not an easy process for any one of us. And because this is a special board meeting that didn't have public comment on the agenda, we're not taking public comment tonight. But our next regular board meeting when public comment will be heard is January 13th, 2025. You can also email the district office as stated in earlier communication that was put out on the district's Facebook page. Lastly, well, I guess this doesn't really apply right now. I was just going to say, please note that we have a middle school basketball game going on across the hall, which it is now over, but that we would have students in and out of the hallways. I'm just reminding everyone to be respectful and be mindful of who might be listening. Thank you for your understanding in this very sensitive matter tonight. Okay, 1.3, agendas, additions, deletions, revisions, and agenda approval.
Move to approve the agenda.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve the agenda and we have a second. Is there any more discussion? And I'm assuming somebody will tell me if Steve has something to say.
If you can hear me, I'm good.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. All right. See, we're going to vote now. So all in favor, say aye, raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Miss Tammy. All right, moving to 2.0, the complaint that we have before us. Lauren Lester, our legal counsel, is actually going to speak for a moment before we get started.
Thank you, Chair Knight, and thank you, board members, for giving me a couple of minutes here to just orient the board a little bit as to the task at hand before you tonight. The board has been asked to review a community member complaint under step 4 of the district's community complaint procedure, which is KLAR. KLAR requires the board to review the record of the complaint from prior steps. It's a 4-step process. And this is the 4th step, to determine whether it warrants further consideration, and if so, how the board is going to proceed. That's the decision that the board must make tonight. That is whether this complaint requires further consideration at your discretion. If the board determines the complaint does not warrant further consideration, the decision made at step 3 of the complaint procedure will be the final decision of the district. If the board determines that the complaint needs further consideration than it was given in the first 3 steps, the board has a number of options. It may conduct or cause to be conducted further investigation. It may request further written submissions from the complainant or other individuals involved, or it may decide to conduct a hearing at a later time. Then it must render a decision based on the additional information gathered within 30 days of the appeal receipt date. That's what's in your policy. And the direction I just wanted to give you is this is not a hearing on the substance of the complaint, on the merits of the complaint. This is purely a decision about whether or not the board wants to, further consider the complaint or not. Because of that, the board should limit its discussion tonight to the procedural aspects of the complaint process. One of the two employees that are implicated in the complaint has not requested that the substance of the complaint be heard in open session. The other one has, Mr. Bonner has. If the board decides to hold a hearing on the complaint for the second employee, it will be held in executive session under ORS 192.6602B unless the employee requests an open hearing. So that's just the instruction that I wanted to give the board tonight, just to focus the discussion, if any, that you'll have before you make this decision tonight on whether you'll further consider the complaint or not.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Does anybody have any questions right now? Okay, I keep on a look to my left, but nobody's there. I mean, Anna's here, but not a board member. Sorry, Anna. All right, 2.1, appeal under step 4 of KLAR in response to a parent complaint against a staff member.
Madam Chair, I motion to not hear the appeal under step 4 of KLAR in response to a parent complaint against a staff member.
Madam Chair, I will second, acknowledging you're not supposed to do negative motions, but this will get the point across.
Oh, I thought you had more. You usually. Okay.
I had a few words, that was it.
Okay, few words. So we have a motion on the table to not proceed, because I won't do the negative, to not proceed further with step 4. We have a second on the table. Do we have any further discussion?
None from me.
What did he say? From me.
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Steve. All right, so let's put this to a vote. All in favor of the motion to not go forward, say aye, raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Tammy, please make note. The board is 4-0. Do we need to? Okay. Basically, what that means is we are not moving forward any further with this process. It is ending at step 3. Do we need to go through that process, or they want to know what step 3 was? Give me just a second. I'm trying to figure this out because I have everybody talking at one time at me. So hold on. Okay, I'm going to be very respectful right now. I am trying to figure out so I can give you the correct answers to everybody that keeps shouting out at me. So give me just a second, please, to make sure I get this correct.
All right, so policy KLAR, that's if anyone's filing a complaint, KLAR, it's a 4-step process. Step 1 is an informal resolution. Lord missed the days when we had sat down and had informal resolutions. That's step 1. If the complainant's not satisfied after step 1, that goes to step 2, where the immediate supervisor would review the complaint and make a determination. If the complainant is not satisfied with step 2, then it goes to step 3, which is the superintendent level. Typically that goes to, on some of these, we'd hire an outside investigator. If the complainant is not satisfied with the recommendations in step 3, then it goes to the board to decide whether they will hear the complaint or say we are satisfied with the resolution that came forward at step 3. The board just voted 4-0 to say they will not take on the complaint any further. They are satisfied with what was recommended as part of the step 3 response. On a typical thing like this, we wouldn't be able to get into any particular personnel stuff out of respect. This is all what the board just decided was to not hear the complaint further, that it will end at step 3. And that's typically that's all we could say on tonight with what the board is doing.
Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, these folks came here tonight because they have a very specific conversation they want to have with us. And unfortunately, the legal system doesn't allow us to have that conversation. And it's also unfortunately true that the way the system works, the superintendent has total control of the assignment of personnel to jobs and let me finish, and the ability to hire and fire. So the board cannot direct the superintendent in personnel matters. But if you listen, you might like what you hear. I move that the board request that the superintendent retain the services of Rob Bonner as athletic director.
I second.
We will need to have a second on the table and I will second that.
Okay. We have a motion on the table, and I didn't hear it all, to retain the services
Request that the
Request.
superintendent retain the services
of Mr. Bonner.
as athletic director.
And we have a second on the table. Is there any further discussion? Just waiting for Steve. All right, so let's go ahead and put this to a vote. All in favor of asking the superintendent to retain services of Mr. Bonner as athletic director. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Steve?
Yeah, I can barely hear you. It's clicking in and out.
Did you hear the motion and the second?
I did. I heard that. I voted yes.
Okay, thank you. All opposed? Miss Tammy? Will you make a motion, note of that, please? Okay.
How do we get a motion on the table to get rid of the superintendent? Without any sort of discussion prior, why can't we have that happen tonight?
You get to. So the answer to the question is that the superintendent, unlike other employees, has a very serious contract. There's also statutory protections for superintendents that don't exist for other positions. So moving precipitously on that tonight would not be in the district's best interest in terms of liability. That is not a discussion. That is not a discussion that we're probably, doesn't mean it can't come back at some point in the future, but moving tonight won't happen.
Okay, at this time, we do need to move on. Please remember, though, your public comments can come in January at our very next board meeting where we have public comment, or you can email the district office at the email that was given. So there's plenty of ways to have your voices heard as well. May I remind you, please, that we need to make sure that we're being respectful and keeping this in order. We need to move on with our agenda, and so we're going to do that at this time. 3.0, transportation of special groups. Leland? 3.1, use of school buses to transport special groups for events.
All right, thank you. So it was brought to my attention recently that several of our residents at a local seniors facility do not have the ability to go out and look at all the Christmas decorations around town. So we have had several bus drivers who are very interested in making that happen. So one of the roadblocks, well, it's not really a roadblock, but board policy EEB does say that the board has to approve any transportation that we make to the public. And I would like to get approval from the board to do that and actually do it for future events and let that be at the discretion of the superintendent so that we don't have to go to the board every time we want to try and do some transportation for some special events.
Are you wanting to do that for this year?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah, we would like to do that this year. We've already started planning. I've got 3 or 4 bus drivers that are super excited about trying to go do it. And
So you just want the motion to authorize this specific purpose?
I would like the motion to
Or what do you
authorize.
want?
I would like the motion to authorize events of this type now and for the future, with the discretion that we always have to go to the superintendent for approval before we do it.
So of this type means like to work with senior centers on transportation or?
Senior centers are special groups that don't have the ability to do this on their own.
And I'm going to safely assume that there's, with our policy, is there a form that the senior citizens living facility fills out?
Anna and I discussed that today, and she's gonna work on some contract language so that we have that in place.
So maybe we could do this, Madam Chair, if it would be all right, and Leland, if it will solve your needs. Immediately tonight, we could authorize the use of the buses for the seniors to go out and participate in Christmas activities. And then you could bring back a written policy for January
Okay,
that would deal more generally with this, so we can see what we're adopting.
okay,
But
I'm good with
I
that.
want to take care of the seniors now, so.
Thank you.
So I move that we authorize the use of the school buses for the transport of seniors to participate in Christmas activities, Christmas and holiday activities.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to authorize tonight the go-ahead of using the facility, the bus facilities to transport the seniors to the activities and we have a second on the table. Is there any more discussion? Okay, let's put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, Ms. Tammy?
Thank you.
Thank you, Leland. Yes.
Madam Chairman, could I request a 5-minute recess?
Yes, we can take a 5-minute recess. Thank you. Okay, welcome back from our 5-minute recess. I know that was longer than 5 minutes, but we had a big crowd. So right now, we're going to move into 4.0 financial work session with Anna Logan, and she is going to walk us through this fun world of math.
Thank you. As you know, the reason we scheduled this meeting was for a financial work session. So I have prepared a financial fundamentals basics presentation for you. The idea behind this, what's that? Oh.
I said we were back from a recess, but I can call this back to order. We're back to order. Are we live streaming too? Are we good with that part? I guess I didn't even ask on that part. Sorry, tech, good job. Way to know my cues. Steve is not with us. He did have to drop off.
That's okay. All right, so we had some questions from our board that made me realize I really should start at the fundamentals of the finances for school districts, and had the idea that if I were to put together sort of a basic financial training and do that at a board meeting, it would be recorded. And so then any future board members could also watch the training. Any community members could watch and learn, even administrators or people in college that are interested in school finance. So that's kind of the idea behind this tonight. School districts operate with some unique financial concepts that are important for the governing body to understand. This foundational knowledge I plan to explain in this training is important because it will foster the board's informed decision-making and give context to the district's financial performance. So the financial structure that we have is built so that all school districts in Oregon use the same basic structure. And then that way that individual school districts can be compared to each other, and that all of the information from all the school districts can flow into ODE and then be compiled. We do have some flexibility in our system, but it has to be within that defined overall structure. So the first most fundamental concept to understand is the way funds are organized and separated. This is the basic structure of fund numbering with the 1, 2, 3, and 400 series. And then there are many funds within each category. To understand the 100 series, it's easier to first explain the other funds. The 200 series is for any money that's restricted. It could be restricted by grant requirements, donors, or formal board restriction, such as a resolution. For example, if we received a grant for robotics, that money can't be used for anything except for robotics. That means it's restricted. We have to maintain the identity of those funds separately from everything else, not just until the funds are spent, but for any point in the future when we may have to go back and run a report to show what was purchased with that grant money. Student body funds are in the 200 series because student effort was used to fundraise money for a specific purpose. So for example, if the high school drama club did a car wash for their program, we effectively communicated to all the community members and donors that that money was going to be used for the drama program. So we would need to keep that money separate from the general fund, separate from other high school funds, and specifically earmarked for drama. So it would be in a 200 level fund. We currently have over 200 funds in the 200 series. The 300 series is just for debt service. We currently have 2 active funds under the 300 series. One is for the general obligation bonds, and one is for the PERS bonds. In the past, we have had other loans, like bank loans or different kinds of bonds for that we had debt that were in this level, but right now we only have these 2 sets of debt. Money that is set aside to pay the principal and interest on these on the loans or the debt, the bonds, comes into the 300 level funds as revenue. And then money that is spent on the principal and interest goes out of those funds as an expense. The 400 series is only used when we have major funding for capital projects, like when we have a bond, or one time we received a very large seismic rehabilitation grant that we used to rehabilitate the roof in one of the gyms here at the middle school. If we passed a bond, the bond proceeds would go into this fund. The fund 431, yes, under the 400 series. And then anything that we spent with bond money would come out of this fund as an expenditure. We currently don't have any active 400 level funds. We have the fund 431 that has budget in it. If we did pass a bond, then that budget would be valid, but since we haven't passed a bond, there's no active things going on. So that brings us to the 100. Basically, anything that's not restricted, not debt service, and not capital projects goes into the 100 funds. And when I say 100 funds, I say that plural because there are multiple 100 funds. The 100 general fund is the general fund, the actual general fund. But there are other funds that are designated for specific use that roll up. And I'll explain what that means to roll up under Fund 100. Those designated funds could, with asterisks around them, could be used for other purposes, but one individual wouldn't be able to make that decision all by themselves. There would have to be a process that would happen either through budget action or board action or something. It wouldn't, and also it's not advisable to use the money in these funds for something else because they have plans. Each one of these have some sort of a future plan, and those plans would be at risk if those funds were moved or used elsewhere. So this is more about the roll-up concept. This is a picture of our audited financial statements, and I know it's really small, so I'm going to expand a little piece of it here. This is an expanded view of just the expenditures section under the general fund. So that first column there is general fund, but really it should say general funds, plural. The actual general fund 100 does not have an ending fund balance of 9.8 million. But when you combine all of the 100 level funds, it actually shows a 24% ending fund balance. And for context, our goal for the general fund in our policy is a 6% ending fund balance. And that's pretty standard across school districts. A long time ago, many years ago, all these 100 level funds that we currently have, were in 200 level funds. And that is not correct. It's not correct accounting because those funds were not restricted by an outside source. They were just internally inhibited by our own controls. So the benefit of, there's a couple benefits of showing them here in the general fund as sub-funds of the general fund. The biggest benefit is that when we, like if we go out for a bond, creditors look, or rating agencies look at our finances, and when they see a 24% ending fund balance, that's really good, and that can give us a better rating. And what that does is it actually can give us better interest rates, which saves all of us money as taxpayers. Okay, the next concept I want to move into is this idea of, I'll call buckets of money. All of the major funds and sub-funds that we have, it kind of resonates with people when you talk about them as buckets. So as part of this training, I want to show you where you can see how much money is in each bucket. And I also want to show you some examples of major and minor funds or sub-funds so that you can understand why you might care or how you might see those. This is a picture of all of the major funds that we currently use, with the concept of each one of them being a bucket. I'll show more on this slide later, but for now just know that each of these buckets may hold additional smaller buckets inside of them. And there are 53 funds here. We also have some inactive funds that are not shown, but you may sometimes encounter them on a board report or on a budget document if they have any activity in recent years until they get to be obsolete and then they'll fall off those reports. So here's an example of one fund. This is one major fund. Fund 263 is fundraised athletics. We also have a different fund that's district funded athletics, but this is the one that students fundraise for specific non-funded items. Fund 263 is the major fund. On the budget document or in your board report, you'll just see one section for Fund 263. But in our accounting system internally, there are lots of sub-funds, one for each sport at each school. So for example, boys basketball at CCHS has a separate sub-fund than boys basketball at CCMS, and separate from girls basketball, and separate from all the other sports. So when the students raise money for their sport, they get to keep it in their own fund. Just to let you know, the accounting department periodically publishes a report on our website that shows the activity specifically for Fund 263. And it's under, if you go to Cook County High School, it's under Athletic Forms and Resources. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it says Athletic Financial Reports. We try to do this every month, but some months it's just not possible, like during audit and things like that, but we always catch up. We always show it as year to date, I guess is what I mean. It's in summary form, just because of the large number of individual transactions, but we do, of course, have the detail in our accounting system. It's important to publish reports like this because mistakes can happen, or even fraud can happen at the level of fundraising before it even gets to the school. So we need that. It's just important. It's helpful to us that there's additional oversight from parents and students and people that are looking at these reports. This is just another example of a major fund that has a lot of sub-funds. Fund 289 is for just miscellaneous grants, and each sub-fund is for a specific purpose. The board, again, only sees 289 in total, but we manage each sub-fund at a deeper level. Each grant has a staff member who is designated as the grant manager, and the grant manager receives updates about their fund balances from my department, and if they ever have questions or need help with it, we keep in touch with them about that. Some donors also require reports during the grant period or after the grant period, and so by having each one of these grants in their own sub-fund, we can easily just go run a report to show what the money was spent on and what the current balance is. This is this is really small, but this is a report that's in your board packet every month. It's called All Funds Fiscal Report, and it shows each of the major funds with a little extra detail for the general fund. The red box shows the current balance in each bucket or fund. This is a continuation of that same report. So often you'll see that a fund has a negative balance, and that's because of the nature of funding for that fund. Some grants are funded up front, and then the fund balance decreases as you spend the money. But this is the opposite of that. Many of our state and federal grants are, we have to spend the money first, and then we request reimbursement. So those funds just continually have a negative balance because we're spending and then we're requesting reimbursement, but while we're waiting for reimbursement, we're continuing to spend. So that's just the way that works. So now I want to talk about transfers between funds. Sometimes money can be transferred between funds. And when that happens, one fund has an expenditure, which is money going out of that fund, and then one fund has revenue, which is money coming in. Transfers out always have to equal transfers in. It's a basic rule that we have, and it has to look like that on the budget and in the actuals. Some funds operate only by getting transfers in from the general fund. Some funds get general fund transfers and then also have other sources of revenue, and then some funds never receive transfers. The budget authorizes transfers out as expenditures, or more technically, appropriations. So this slide is to show when transfers out of the general fund are likely to occur. It definitely will happen with 100 level funds because transfers in from the general fund are those funds' main source or only source of funds. Districts would not want to transfer to federal or state grants because it's important to report on exactly what the state or federal grant dollars were spent on without mixing in other revenue sources. For ASB accounts or fundraising accounts, it's very unlikely, but not impossible for money to be transferred in from the general fund. It can happen, but generally the reason that they have their fundraised funds is because they're fundraising for their money. There have been times when we've transferred money into a grant fund because we needed to supplement the amount in that grant or provide matching funds. So that can happen, but it doesn't happen often. If the budget allows and we have money, we can transfer into reserves. It would be most likely in that pink purple section to be in 295, 297, or 298 because those are mostly funded by general fund transfers and don't have many other sources. In fact, they don't have any other sources. The auditorium has a tiny revenue source, but the other ones do not. Nutrition services, you may not know this, but we have to transfer, it's about $11,000 of the state school fund into the nutrition services fund every year. It's just like a state revenue sharing thing, so we have to put about $11,000 into that fund. And then if there are program losses, we also have to transfer money into that fund, as you know. In the 300 level fund, set of funds, currently only 330, which is the PERS bonds, receives transfers from the general fund. The PERS bonds are actually funded by the general fund. That's the way it was planned and set up back in 2002 and 2003. And these transfers are budgeted every year. Okay, budget versus appropriations. This section kind of tries to explain that. So a budget is a flexible plan that allows the ability to adapt to changing conditions, but it's made many months in advance of actually operating. And the budget is used as an outline to justify the appropriations. Appropriations are an authorization to spend money. So you can use the words budget and appropriations interchangeably if you're not being technical, because they have similar meanings in practice. But if we increase the budget, we would also have to increase appropriations, or it doesn't do any good to increase the budget because then you can't spend it. The budget committee approves the budget, the board adopts the budget, and then the board makes appropriations. And I'll show you what that looks like, which you've seen, but this is just a reminder. So there's a resolution for adopting the budget after it's been approved by the budget committee. It's very simple. The budget committee had seen all the detail. Then it goes to the board in just this total amount, but this does not create appropriations. This is the resolution for making appropriations, and I will make it a little bit bigger. So, but you can see each fund is listed, 100, 200, 300, 400, along with each major function in that fund. And then each function level is an appropriation level. So the 100 general fund, 100 instruction is an appropriation level. I'm going to just expand that little section there of the general fund. Again, this numbering system was designed by ODE so that all the school districts use the same general system. So you can see here that there's 26 million appropriated for the function 1000 instruction, 19 million for function 2000 support services, etc. There's a lot of detail behind each appropriation level, but that detail is in the budget. We can underspend on one budget line item and overspend on another budgeted line item as within that appropriation level, as long as we don't exceed that total appropriation level. So for example, if we will save money on one thing that falls under instruction, but another thing under instruction comes in over budget, it's fine, as long as the net effect doesn't push us over appropriations for instruction. So returning to the metaphor of funds being buckets, this is an illustration of the general fund 100 as a blue bucket. We budget for money coming in, which is revenue, shown as a green rectangle. We also budget for money going out, or expenses, which is shown as an orange rectangle. The green rectangle and the orange rectangle are the same size as each other because it's a balanced budget. There's a budgeted expectation for the ending balance, which is represented by a black line, which is the level of the bucket at the end of the year. The concept is you start with a full bucket, and then money comes in, money goes out, and you have the same amount of money at the end of the year. That's not always what happens if there are strategic reasons to do something different, but that's the basic concept, and it's a simplified example. If revenue comes in over budget, that brings up the total balance in the fund to more than planned. When the green rectangle gets bigger and nothing else changes, the whole blue bucket gets bigger, more than the black line. That usually means we'll have more money in the fund than required to start the next fiscal year. That excess balance is transferred out to other funds, so we end up with the blue cylinder being at the black line where it needs to be. The same thing can happen with expenses. If expenses are less than planned, the fund balance goes up. Meaning, like, if you imagine a bucket, if you take less liquid out, there's more liquid in the bucket, so the bucket has more in it. So that means the whole blue cylinder gets bigger, and again, there's more money available than planned, and we can transfer some out to other funds. In some years, both things happen, revenue's higher and expenses are lower. This is a report in your board packet on a monthly basis. It's the general fund projection. This is the blue bucket. This is where I report the projections for all of the previous slides. What's our bucket going to look like? In this example, the revenue on line 10 is projected to be higher than budget. That means the green cylinder will be bigger than budgeted. The total expenses on line 18 right now are projected to be really close to budget. So just pretend that that 31,000 is basically zero. In that case, the orange cylinder would not be bigger or smaller than the budget. At the bottom of the report, there's a projected ending fund balance. Lines 23 and 24 go together and add up to line 25. Line 24 shows that line 24 shows the amount that's projected to roll forward to the following year. Generally, that needs to be about 2 million. If it's less than 2 million, it'll show whatever that number is. So if it was 1.9 million, that would just be 1.9 million, and there would be nothing on line 23. Because line 23 is the amount above the 2 million that could theoretically be transferred out to other funds. Everything making sense so far? I'll keep going. All right, now this next concept is about budget versus resources. There's a difference between, do we have budget for this expenditure and do we have money for this expenditure? So remember that the budget is a flexible financial plan. Imagine that we had this very simple budget. The appropriations would be 26 million for instruction, 10 million for support, 3 million for facilities construction, and 5 million for transfers. Those would be the appropriation levels that we would have. Now the budget is delivered and approved in spring for the following year. But by the time the following year is underway, a lot of circumstances have changed. So imagine that our actuals came in a little bit differently. This is very simplified. Imagine that our property tax revenue and our state school fund revenue both come in $100,000 over budget. That's $200,000 in actual money received that we didn't budget for. Also imagine that our instruction expenses came in $500,000 under budget. That's money we thought we would spend, but didn't for whatever reason. That's an additional $500,000 in money we have because we didn't spend it, but that we didn't budget to have. Everything good? So if we actually have $700,000 in money that we didn't expect to have, then the blue bucket is $700,000 larger than we planned it to be. So imagine further that we have identified a sudden need to spend that $700,000 on facilities construction. We do not have budget for that new expense. We don't have appropriations. We do have money for that expense, but we can't spend it unless we increase or change the appropriations. That requires an action of the board. And the board is limited in how much change that the board can make without reconvening the budget committee. There are lots of, I'm going to give you a simplified thing. If it's under 10% of the total expenses in that fund, then the board can just do a simple resolution. There's a lot of exceptions and additional things to know about that, but that's my job to tell you when that is happening. Also, in an opposite example, our revenue could come in under budget, in which case we might have budget to spend the money, but we don't have the money. So we might have to reduce our spending in response to lower revenue, even though we've got the budget. So if you, as the board, ever ask me if we have funds for something and I hesitate, just know that I need to look at all these factors before I answer you. Okay, so just to recap, these are the things that we covered. And if the members of the school board have interest in any topics for future explanations, or if I didn't go into enough detail on any of this, or if I missed something, just let me know and I'll try and cover that in a future board meeting in a smaller chunk of time. Spoiler alert, PERS bonds are going to be a topic of interest in the near future. They're very complicated, but they are a good tool that has saved us over $20 million to date. So as the PERS rates are rising substantially, we may want to consider additional PERS bonds. So thank you for allowing me to share this information. This is the world I live in, and it's a happy place for me. So I hope you found it worthwhile.
Thank you, Anna. That was a lot to go over. People that,
So that was about 20 minutes, not 2 hours.
Right? That was quick. Okay, I guess we will move to 5.0, upcoming date change. 5.1 is the superintendent 100-day meet and greet, which is December 17th at 5 o'clock. It's going to run for an hour at the district office.
That's tomorrow.
Oh.
Actually won't be.
I was like, wait, that date isn't, yeah, sorry. No, that meeting is getting rescheduled. I apologize. Okay, I think that is all that we have for this evening. So we're going to adjourn this meeting at 7:22. Thank you all for coming.